So I wanted to show you a few new features that's coming with version 19.1, mainly around how to lay out an Axiom application for your asset model. So what you're seeing me do here first is building out an inline asset picker on my main application. I've got some simulated oil well data that we'll use, and so now I've got my wells lined up. I've dropped an asset template container and I'm sizing it for the remainder of the screen. The idea behind the asset template container, it has a panel that is defaulted onto it, and within that panel anything I design will start to replicate down the page based on the number of assets. So we've got a child asset of a well called a well pad that we're assigning to the template container. And now, as you'll notice, anything I drop onto the panel of the asset template container, or any formatting that I do, automatically replicates to the other panels below it. And so within well 1, it looks like there's a 1H and a 2H well pad. And so now I'm just going to build this out and start to format it to my needs. The beauty of this is that it doesn't matter how many assets I have. I might have 10 or I might have 110. I'm only going to build my visualization templates one time. Now I'm dropping a grid onto the page. I'm going to use this grid to display some key stats on this well pad. And I'm just going to use some labels and format them up so that I can very easily organize my data. One of the things that I like about the way that we do our labels and our value boxes is we give you different controls over sizing and alignment, center, left, right, things of that nature. So you can really start to build it out and not just show the data, but do it in a way that's visually pleasing. So by default, when I dropped that grid on, it only had 3 columns. We just changed that up to 4 columns. And now we're set up to start putting in what we want. So I'm starting with a label, and then I'm going to put a value box in there 3 different times. The idea here is that I want to add some context to my data. So if we're going to show something like, say, wellhead temperature, then I want to be able to show not just the value, but I also want to give the client the idea of whether they can trust the value. So not only are we going to show value, but we're also going to show the quality score as well as the most recent timestamp. That way they'll know they're not looking at stale data. Once I've formatted the first row, then it's just a matter of copying that formatting down a couple times. Now this is alpha software, it's not even a beta release yet, so you're going to see a few little buggy things. One of them is as I'm doing a multiple line copy, it wasn't copying the 3rd value box. But these are all things that we'll work through before we do a release of this. By the way, if you would be interested in doing any type of beta testing, just let us know. You can email us info@canarylabs.com and sign up for our beta program. It's always a great way to get the newest stuff first and help us really develop it to your exact needs. All right, so I changed out the formatting to go from value to quality and then also now time. And on the time, I'm going to tell it how I want the timestamp to appear. I think I'm going to add month, day, and year in there also. And so now I can see that I've got 3 different temperatures, wellhead, casing, and gas for well 1H. I see that they're all 3 good quality scores, and the time is recent enough that I can trust that data. Perfect. All right, I'm going to resize this. I think I give it a little header here. Yeah, give it a label of temperatures, and then we'll keep designing. All right, so the next piece of this that I wanted to lay out was some type of a production number. Obviously here on this oil and gas well pad, we've got some gas production. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time here and clean up the formatting on my panel so that I can make this a production panel. I am showing this all in real time. I have not sped up or cut out of this video any of the layout. Um, I think I made two different edit cuts on the post-production of this video. Just there was some bug error pop-ups and things like that that made it messy. I didn't want to have to deal with explaining away the bugs. So I cut that scene out. But otherwise, you're seeing everything in real time. In all, it will take less than 15 minutes for me to do not just this screen, but a second screen and display data for, I believe total count was over 150, maybe 200 different wells. And that's really the beauty of designing via the asset model. You design it once and get it set, or even adjust your design. And when you adjust your design, it still applies all of your changes out across the entire group of assets. All right, so I've dropped a couple donut gauges. I've just messing around with the format. I'm super particular about design and layout. Most of the customer screens that I see, they're not nearly as worried about things lining up exactly, which certainly makes sense. For me, I would lose sleep at night, so I have to get it right every single time, even when I'm going for speed. But the good news is, like I said, less than 15 minutes, even with that level of detail, makes it really easy. I have found that designing an Axiom is one of the easier visualization design tools. We give you just enough properties to be able to get things to your liking, but there's not so many properties that you get lost in trying to understand what you should or should not change. I think I'm going to change scales here real quick on that second donut gauge. Drop it to a 0 to, I think, 10 scale. There we go. All right, so just really one more thing to do here on this page. Once I get that spaced the way that I like it, we'd like to have some sense of what our status is on this well, where we're at in the operation. And so my final piece here, once I get this laid out, I think I'm going to change the width on those donut gauges. But then my final piece, once that's all done, will be to drop in some accumulation data on there. There we go. So now we have our flow, gas flow, the daily volume of gas, as well as the accumulated volume of that wellhead. I did a little prepend on the value there in the format box. You can do pre or post pend, and then I changed the decimal places from 2 to 0 right there inside of the text property. It's a really nice feature. You don't have to go back and do anything to the actual original data values inside of the database or the tag logging side. You can choose how you want to display your decimal points right there inside of the edit feature under properties. You can see I spent quite a lot of time just tweaking the layout. Again, this is all time you could save if you were just going for a quick and dirty display. All right, surely that's now to my liking. Center it in there, and then we're just gonna size the panel down just enough to take advantage of this last little bit of space. And then down here we had two other tags that we could monitor. One I believe is a command, and the other is a SSV status tag. So on this tag, instead of logging just a value, they're actually logging a string. So they're logging the stat or the state of 3 as well as what that means for the organization. We'll just do some formatting changes here. We'll change the width, and I think instead of trying to prepend the values, I'll just drop some labels there on the left. I'm going to make it very apparent for a user what they're looking at. The idea behind any screen that we design is one that we don't want someone who's, say, new to the organization to really have to have insider knowledge to be able to understand what they're seeing. And that's actually, speaking of that, that's really the beauty of the asset model. The asset model allows us to take things that, like tag names, for instance. We don't change the way that we log tag names from, say, the control system, but what we're able to do is create all of these virtualized views of the actual physical data. And in that, you can do tag aliasing. So if you have a tag name that is quite cryptic, you have the ability to expose that tag to your users without making them have to really learn your unique tag naming structure. And that's the case here. You can see all these tag names are very easy to understand. Well, that's because this is a virtualized view of those tags. They have quite complicated tag names originally. All right, so I've moved over to the trend graph. As you can see, as soon as I added trends to the top, they also add down below to the trend chart for well 1, 2H. So I've taken my casein and my flow line pressure. I've linked them to the same scales, moved out to 60 days worth of data. And I think the only other thing I want to do here is build out a calculation. This calculation is going to be based on the relationship of the casein and flow line pressure. So we'll take an absolute value of the difference of those two, casein minus flow line, and then we'll take that difference and we'll divide it out by the value of the, I think, flow line. There we go. All right, so that'll give us a calculation, and that calculation again also will populate on the subsequent assets as we go down the page. So there you have it. We've designed a really nice little asset overview screen. Additionally, now I could script this so that if I clicked on the asset, it could launch maybe a detail page for that asset on another screen. There's all kinds of things that we could do. I'm going to roll through a couple of these wells. You can see the first well had 2 well pads. Well number 2, I think, has 9 of them, I think, maybe in total. But it doesn't matter. It will automatically take this container, take my asset template and apply it for the number of assets or child assets for each piece of structure that we're looking at. So it's really, I think, a nice slick program. If I drop back down to, say, a well that only has a single pad, it's not going to show a bunch of blank ones. It's just going to show me the single pad. Click through a few more and show you here, and then I'll go back up to one that's got 5 or 6. It's just a great way if your job and your day-to-day is just scanning through a lot of different assets and looking for pattern recognition or looking for any type of visual indicators of the health of that asset. This will really speed up not just your daily workload, but anytime you want to make a design change or a tweak to your visualization, you're just going to do it that one time. All right, I'm going to show you another way on this same application that we could get maybe every single well pad's, let's just look at production data very quickly. So I'm going to use the grid for that. I'm going to lay the grid out, and then I'm going to assign a well pad asset to it. I have a general idea. This is going to be pretty simple. I'm just going to do 3 columns, and I'm only going to be worried about total life production data on this. So we'll use our well pads. As soon as I pull in my asset label into the grid, it auto discovers every single well pad that's available inside of this model. When I put a value box in and try to link data to that value box, it's going to do the same thing for me. It's only going to give me options that are there within this asset model. So now I select a tag and it takes me to well 1.1h because that's my top line. It shows me the tags that are available. I pick the tags, and then it automatically fills all of those tags values with the associated well. I've also added a spark chart, changed every single one to a 60-day duration. Now I'll just change the height. I'm going to go in here and actually change the grid's layout. Ask that we give a little bit of a larger column to the third column, my spark chart. I did 60 days. We don't have data here, I think, for the most recent 20-day period, something like that. That's why you see that blank. But anyway, you saw that. That was less than 2 minutes just to get a table built. And now I've got production data for every single well. Yeah. So that's a real nice quick down and dirty preview of 19.1. Let us know your comments. Tell us what you're thinking. We'd love to hear from you.